As engineering and product leaders, I believe one of the most important skills to develop is the ability to anticipate what might be ahead, to recognize incoming changes and then prepare ourselves and our teams to adapt and respond. And as I've been thinking about this and reflecting on my own experience, I realized there were a number of techniques and tools that I'd used over the years to help me stay effective, anticipate change, and lead my teams. And that's what I'm excited to share with you today. So my name is James. I'm VP of Engineering at Cint. I've been in engineering leadership roles for about 7 years and generally in software engineering for about 20 years. And a lot of change in that time. And as I thought through my transition from being hands-on, very close to the code, close to the technology, through to coaching managers, leading teams, I realized that, there's this disconnect that sometimes happens, this sort of feeling of detachment from current technology. But one thing that really helped me was the ability to anticipate change. And that's what this talk is fundamentally about. Some tools, some techniques, some mental models that have helped me deal with change in our org, in our industry, in our roles, and within our team. So hopefully you can use some of these and take them away as you support and lead your teams. Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, said this in a recent podcast. Our job as CEOs is to look around corners, anticipate where opportunities will be someday, and then prepare the company, position the company to be near them, standing under the tree to do a diving catch when the apple falls. And I love the imagery this creates, the idea of looking out for future opportunities, preparation, agility, being ready to make a decision or even take a risk. And so we're going to think about some ways to develop an anticipatory mindset, which is going to help us with longer term planning and future proofing. We'll take a look at some sources of information we can use for knowledge gathering, which is going to help build our intuition and help our decision making. And then finally, we'll talk about what I call the leadership stack, which is going to help us stay effective when current knowledge is lacking. So the first technique we'll explore is scenario planning. Scenario planning is the process of creating future worlds or scenarios that could occur based on driving forces that we observe today, and then discussing with our team what changes we might make to our org if those scenarios were to occur. So first we define some scenarios, and then we use them to discuss and evaluate our current strategies. And I did this with my chief strategy officer and a handful of colleagues over about 4 or 5 hours. You can use this technique for, looking 3-5 years into the future. You can use it for a project that you're running, but it's a great way to develop expansive thinking, to anticipate what might happen in the future. So we're going to go through a scenario planning exercise together. When we define scenarios, the first question we need to ask is, what are the 2 critical uncertainties that might change how we run our organization? And we can define critical uncertainties as driving forces which are both impactful and unpredictable. So if you're like me, you're interested in how AI is going to affect our jobs, it's going to affect engineering development. So in this mock exercise, I'm going to select AI-assisted engineering as one of these driving forces and software engineering salaries. I'm curious about how these 2 things are going to play out. And then for each uncertainty, we're going to consider a hypergrowth case and a slow growth case. So what we'll do is we'll put these onto a 2x2 matrix, and that will give us 4 possible worlds to explore. So here's our scenario matrix with our 2 critical uncertainties. If we go through these scenarios, in scenario 1, we've got AI-assisted engineering adoption is slow, developer salaries remain stable. So maybe the hype, the signals we're seeing today don't translate into any significant change. Then we get into scenario 2, which is that AI adoption is still slow, but for some reason, developer salaries increase. We don't know why that might be, but this is a future we may want to explore. And then scenario 3, we see AI-assisted engineering grow significantly, but developer salaries maybe remain stable. Now, maybe in this world, we have more access to engineering because of AI-assisted, and that means we have way more engineers. And then finally, we see the hypergrowth case for both. So AI-assisted engineering grows, developer salaries massively increase. Maybe we're, all massively more impressively productive as engineers, greater profits, faster, high-quality products. Who knows? But using this scenario matrix, we can now discuss with our team our current strategies. We can decide what would work in these future scenarios. So we can start to ask questions like, what is the likelihood and the impact of some of these scenarios? What are we doing today that would work or thrive in all of these scenarios? And what are we doing that would fail in these scenarios? And then what options do we have? As we anticipate the likely and high impact scenarios, what are the options that we can take? So it's a combination of a scenario matrix and some good questions to discuss with your team can help you lead with increased confidence and help you prepare for a possible future. So as we continue to think about developing an anticipatory mindset, we need to, of course, accept that technology is always changing. That change sometimes is driven by external forces, but also can be triggered from within our organization. And one of your responsibilities as an engineering leader is to help communicate and manage that change effectively. And one of the ways you can do that is to build a technology radar. So this was originally developed by ThoughtWorks. They publish an opinionated guide twice a year. Highly recommend taking a look at theirs, but they also strongly encourage you to develop your own. And building your own is a great way to visualize and communicate your technology strategy. It provides a way for you to inclusively bring your team in, and hopefully by doing it as a group, it becomes something that everyone can feel some ownership and responsibility for. So let's take a closer look at the tech radar and how it can help us prepare our team for the future. So here's the visual radar metaphor. We've got the quadrants represent techniques, tools, languages, platforms, and frameworks, and then the rings which represent the status of each item. So hold means we think we're phasing this out, don't use it for anything new. Assess, we think this has potential value, it's got some interesting ideas, we need to do some research and then provide some feedback. And then trial, which means this is very promising, we now need to really test it on a real world but non-critical project. And then finally, adopt, which means it's gone through the assessment. We think it's absolutely recommended to be used. So why build a tech radar? Well, as an engineering leader, one of your responsibilities is to help develop and communicate the technical strategy, which means marking out where we are today, where we want to be, and how we're going to get there. And so you can use the process of developing a radar to bring your team together and to build that technology strategy. And again, bringing people together, hopefully people feel some ownership and responsibility for that. And an easy way to start, and the way that I started this in a previous company, was to ask your tech leaders, your function leaders, your head of data science, UI, backend, front end, to just document what are the technologies they're using today, what are the techniques, tools they're interested in for the future, and then also what are the things they're trying to get rid of, what are the things they're trying to phase out. And just doing that can bring up some really interesting discussion points. For example, maybe there are some contradictory choices here. Maybe one team really wants to use DynamoDB, another team are trying to phase that out. Maybe there are some missing implicit choices that need to be made more explicit. Maybe it highlights some failed initiatives. I mean, how many people have got something which is being phased out but is still in production for years, responsible for 30% of revenue? Yeah, just me. No, I'm sure some of you have out there. But it also tends to highlight some organizational characteristics as well. So maybe as an organization, we find it hard to deprecate technologies, or we find it hard to adopt new technologies quickly enough. And then finally, it can sometimes help communicate institutional knowledge in a clear and consistent way, which is really good for new starters or people who are moving between teams. So developing a technology radar can be a driver of a lot of good discussions and helps you as an engineering leader prepare a technical strategy for the future. So next, we're going to think about knowledge gathering. And this is going to help us in the short term build a mental model of our organization, which is going to develop our intuition and hopefully improve our decision making. Now, if you are not a football fan, you might have a very tricky couple of months because the European Championships are about to start. And if you watch football players, especially the players who don't have the ball, you'll see they are constantly swiveling their heads. They're basically scanning the field, observing the movement of other players, looking for opportunities, looking for spaces. And all of this builds their mental model of the game so that when they do get the ball, they're more likely to make a higher quality decision. And so borrowing that analogy and translating it to engineering leadership, the process I've used to develop my awareness is asking what I call scanning questions. And these are questions which are going to help me build up knowledge in the areas I need to be up to date on. So the questions focus on three areas: company knowledge, industry knowledge, and opportunistic knowledge. And the idea is to give you a topic you can deep dive into. You can go and find the people in your organization who can help you, and you basically interview them. So let's start with company knowledge. How does a company make money? You can ask also, how does a company spend money? we should all be way more adept at asking those sorts of questions now after Mary's talk. What are the long-standing challenges that we're facing? Go and find the historians in the organisation who can tell you this has been a perennial problem for years. That's a really interesting question to ask. How do our teams collaborate, debate, design, and deliver software? And then finally, what slows us down? How do we reduce our cycle time? I saw there was a fantastic board out there by the LeadingEng stand, which is just what is the things that slow your team down? Go and have a read of that. It's a bit like staring into a mirror. So I recommend you build up your own set of company-focused scanning questions. There are many more that you can add to this list, and it's going to be quite personal as part of your learning journey. So one of the goals of this whole exercise is to help you avoid the tunnel vision that often comes with being so busy managing teams. You can easily get stuck in the details, you can lose the broader perspective, and you can get in your own bubble and forget that things are constantly changing. So we can use some industry scanning questions to help us stay current. Starting with, why does this industry exist and what problem is it here to solve? You know, if you imagine the problem you're trying to solve today could be solved in an entirely new way with future technology. So we can think about, who are our major competitors? Why do they exist? How do they differentiate? We can also think about, how might someone create a game-changing disruptive product in this industry? What are the things someone is going to have to do to really change how our business operates or solve the problem in a new way? And then, who are our ideal customers? Who are our actual customers? In the past, I've had situations where you look at your product, you look at your actual customers, and you go, this is not a good fit. And actually, how do we need to evolve the product to get a better fit with our actual customers, or maybe go after the right type of customers? So these questions help give you a better feel for your organization within the industry, helps you understand competitive pressures, helps you build some knowledge about the driving forces that are going to impact the decisions you're going to need to make. And then finally, we come to opportunistic knowledge. This is all about absorbing information. It's about staying curious. It's about putting yourself into a space where you're going to learn new information. And I often find it's really useful to just sit with your team and pepper them with some of these sorts of questions. So we can think about what technologies are potentially undervalued or underutilized. Take a look at your vendor list, your tech stack. I'm almost certain there are going to be things that you're paying for where you're only using 50% of its capability. What are the things that we can do to get the most out of stuff we already have? What can we learn from adjacent industries? I as a software engineer, really like learning about industrial design or the automotive industry. Often there are problems solved in those industries which give you an interesting new perspective on how you can solve problems in software engineering. And what can we learn from our colleagues and our communities? Absolutely encourage you to spend time with your head of design or your head of platform engineering. Often that time gives you an understanding of the software, the services, the constraints that your teams are working within. And then finally, we can look at changes in attitudes towards new technology. How are people feeling now about data privacy, about other things which are changing right now? If you think about user profiling and access, cookies and all those sorts of things, what can we learn from the way attitudes are changing towards technologies today? So it's these sources that we can use for scanning, company knowledge, industry knowledge, and opportunistic knowledge. And in asking questions focused on these categories can give us a more up-to-date understanding of our organization, hopefully help us make higher quality decisions. So finally, we come to the leadership stack, which is going to give us sort of a fallback mechanism for when we're going through change. So this is similar to the idea of a tech stack, but just with the focus on the skills and competencies that are going to help us be effective as a leader. And there are two specific ways in which this helps. So firstly, it helps me prepare for change ahead of time. It gives me a way to understand the skills that I might need in specific categories, and then also helps me increase my confidence and potential as I start to pick up these skills. And then secondly, it helps me stay effective as I'm going through a transition. So usually if you're going through a change, maybe you're changing your role, changing the teams that you're managing, it's useful to know that your current knowledge is lacking, and therefore how do I need to fill the gap that knowledge gap creates. So here's the leadership stack. It's comprised of focus areas and some competencies. Level 1 is going to be all about people skills. So this is all about having effective one-to-ones. It's about performance management, delegation, techniques, inclusive decision-making, coaching, career planning, lots of skills. Actually, probably Hill's slide is going to be far better at giving you a whole list of skills in this area. But all these sorts of skills here have a focus on understanding and working with people. Level 2 represents project management skills. So this is all about setting goals, planning, understanding team dynamics, dealing with dependencies and bottlenecks and timelines. Two of my favorite books in this are the Gene Kim books, The Phoenix Project, Unicorn Project, all about the challenges of people working together to achieve a goal. Level 3 is all about software engineering. So it's not uncommon as an engineering leader to be responsible for managing a team who are basically technical experts in an area you have very little exposure to. And so this reminds me that there are going to be some parts of my skills which are about just skilling up on certain technologies. And then finally, level 4 represents company goals. This is all about the skills you need to inspire your team to deliver against the goals set by your leadership team. So we might think about, what are our financial metrics? What are our targets? What are the KPIs that we're measured against? How do I inspire my team? How do I empower my team to then have the autonomy to go after those goals? So in my experience as an engineering leader, you're often dealing with a blend of all 4 of these things: people problems, project management challenges, technical constraints, and all within the context of trying to achieve a company goal. So firstly, just having this written down, having this mental model helps you understand where I need to develop my skills. Maybe you're asking yourself, how do I develop as a leader? And so these 4 areas can be a good place to start in terms of the categories of skills that you need to develop. You might find you need to improve your coaching skills, or you need to facilitate decision-making, or you need to better understand how a Kubernetes cluster works. And all of this prepares you for that future change. And then the second way it helps me stay effective is during that period of a transition, it helps me focus on the part of the stack that's going to be helpful for me to remain effective. So you can imagine the process of going through a reorg, or you're changing a team, or you're responsible for a new product or a new line of business. During this period of change, I tend to focus on the people side. Who am I managing? Who are my key subject matter experts? Who are the key influencers who are going to help me understand this area a bit better? And then I think about project management skills. What problem are they solving? What challenges are they dealing with? What are the bottlenecks to getting things done? At this point, you may not have that deep technical intuition, but you can use project management skills to understand the challenges that the team are facing. And then I think about, how are they doing it? What database systems are they using? How are they deploying, monitoring, and testing their application? And then finally, I think about why. Why are they doing it? What is this trying to achieve? What are the goals that they're going after? And so by having this framework, it gives you an opportunity to sort of ensure that as you go through a period of change, you don't lose sight of the key steps along the way. So for me, focusing on people first is really important. It helps establish trust, helps to communicate your intentions, because it turns out everything you need to do after that depends on having that core foundation. So bringing it all together in anticipation of change, we have our leadership stack, which is going to give us some 4 focus areas, skills to develop so we can prepare for change and make transitions well. We have our scanning questions, which is going to help us build a mental model of our company, of our industry, to develop our intuition and decision-making. We can build a technology radar to help our team communicate the choices we want to make today and into the future. And then finally, we can use scenario planning to imagine future worlds and prepare our organization for change. And with that, I hope you have some ideas, some tools you can take away to help support and lead your teams. Thank you for listening.